Now, I'll be honest straight off the bat. I've titled this a keep or sell video so that it stays in line with the other reviews of new addition to my collection. I think a better title would be keep or gift, because this is a very inexpensive model that doesn't necessarily warrant the effort it takes to put it up on eBay, as the return after eBay's cut would be so minimal it would be far better to pass this on to a friend or indeed a charity shop. Now, with that nomenclature out of the way, I think the best place to begin with this watch is my history with it, and that is a very short story, because I don't have one. Unlike other Casio models, this is one that I've only ever admired from afar, and not something that has any nostalgic ties to my childhood. I want to make that clear straight away, because I'm sure some of the things I have to say about the model might not sit comfortably with those of you who have rose-tinted goggles for this range. That's not to say I think this is a bad watch, far from it, but it wouldn't be much of a review if I didn't discuss the negatives. With all that said, let's get into the video. Before we get into the individual model that I've purchased, I think it's worth having a look at the range in general, because there are a lot of world timer models that Casio have produced throughout the years. The first launched back in 1976, the Casiotron X1, which retailed in the UK just under £130. Adjusting that for inflation spits out a figure north of £1,000, so this was by no means a humble beginning. While the quartz crisis of the 70s was devastating for the traditional watchmaking brands, you really have to praise the speed of innovation in the quartz space. Think of it this way: the world's first wristwatch was produced in 1810 by Abraham Louis Breguet. The world's first mechanical world timer wasn't developed until the 1930s by Louis Cotier. By comparison, Casio released the initial Casiotron in 1974 and were releasing a world timer model 2 years later. Now, you can argue just how meritorious that is, but I do think that horology often mourns the impact of the quartz crisis, but doesn't always celebrate its successes. One of the reasons that I don't have nostalgia for this particular range is my age. I'm 37 now, and both the circular AE1000W and square AE1200WH models launched in the 2010s. Too late for me to have any fond childhood memories of them. For me, models like the AE20W, BP100 and some of the databank models with world timer functionality strike much more of a chord. What does resonate with me though is the design of the model. It's quite clearly based on the Seiko G757 which Bond wore in Octopussy. I couldn't tell you why, maybe it's the space theme, but as a kid my favourite Bond film was always Moonraker. I do rate the memory bank model he wore a bit higher than the G757, but they're both cool pieces. One thing for sure, if you want to play at being James Bond, the Casio is much cheaper as an entry point than buying a modern Omega. Mine cost me just a few cents over $30. If you want to push the boat out, you can get a version with a stainless steel case and bracelet for a few dollars more, but I think personally you're likely to find that the resin strap version is more comfortable. While I think the design inspirations for this watch are very clear, I do want to take a moment to chat some nonsense about what I see when I look at this. It puts me in mind of two things in particular. I'm not sure I could really explain why, but I'll tell you what they are and you can tell me if you catch my drift with this. The world timer makes me think of the rangefinder from Alien and the targeting software from an X-Wing. That kind of, we want the technology to look futuristic, but we're limited by the technology of the day kind of science fiction vibe. I think Casio have perfectly captured that here, and having all the separate little cutout windows for each function only helps hammer that home. Before I drift way too far off topic, let's talk about the specifications. The watch is just under 40mm in diameter, but as a square watch is going to wear larger than that measurement might indicate. It's also 12.5mm thick, so this is a model with some presence on wrist. I would think of it as a watch to wear for being outdoors and exploring. It definitely doesn't have the look or sizing to be pairing easily with formal attire. The build quality is rock solid, as many Casios are, and this boasts a 10-year battery life, something that apparently warrants advertising on the watch itself, which I have to say is a bit of unusual marketing to my eye. It can show the time across 48 global cities, spanning 31 different time zones, run 5 separate alarms, and if you really want it to, will beep twice every hour on the hour. The world timer functionality is supported by the small map, which gives you an indication of where in the world you're currently displaying the time for. I have to admit, I've had a fair few things lined up for the channel sat at the side of my desk for a long time now. A time grapher I simply haven't had time to get my head around, and some mods for my project watch that I haven't gotten around to installing. Having them sat there did get me thinking though. Much like other cheap Casio models, there is a big scene out there for personalising and modifying the world timer. Modding the screen with a range of different colours is a popular option, but you can also get different straps and cases. My personal favourite is this custom model that has had everything done to it, including hydro modding. It's pure Star Wars at this point. I can definitely see the appeal of modding one of these watches, whether you want to do it yourself as a project or pay a little extra to have it done for you. Frankly, I think that these mods really bring the watch to life, and when you look at how good some of them look, it's a wonder why Casio don't release some more colourful in-house models, and I can definitely see a future where I might try out some of these mods for myself. Small steps on that front though. For me, I think the biggest issue with this watch is actually Casio themselves. There are so many G-Shock models that have world timer functionality, including many of the octagonal ranges that I simply can't stop buying. You can pick up a GA2100 for around $60 if you're willing to shop around, so twice the price, but in my opinion far better looking, available in more colourways and considerably more durable. I appreciate these are very different timepieces, but I could write an entire video outlining all the different Casio models with world timer functionality, and a fair few I could argue would be better buys than the Illuminator. I think what I'm saying is you've really got to love that specific retro look to make this your best all-round option. If you look up reviews for this model, you're going to struggle to find any negative ones in all honesty. So make no mistake, I would give a positive review too. The problem there is Casio once again though. So many of their models offer insane value for money compared to their competitors. It's a little bit like seeing a free attraction rated highly on TripAdvisor. For the cost, it's amazing, but so are all the others. That might lead you to question then, if that's how I feel, why on earth did I buy this over one of those other options? Well, the justification is quite simple. My thought process didn't actually go any further than cost. Long-term viewers of the channel will know that I love to travel, and not always to the safest of places. Locations which I'm not comfortable bringing my wife and daughter, shall we say. The idea of wearing an expensive GMT or world timer model on your wrist would be outright idiotic. Not only is the Illuminator not expensive, but it doesn't remotely try to look like it's a premium product either, and that to me is exactly why I wanted one. As I'll be travelling without my family, I still want to be able to see the time difference, and you could argue, well, check the time on your phone, but we are talking about some locations where it's not only incredibly expensive to use roaming, but again, not that smart to be flashing technology either. I think that will have made the conclusion of this video fairly clear. I will 100% be keeping this watch, because it serves a really clear purpose for me. Now, me keeping the watch isn't necessarily the same as me recommending you go out and buy one. I don't think I would go that far. The use case is fairly niche in my opinion, so you've either got to really love this design, have your own plans for modding one, or need an inexpensive world timer to make this a clear no-brainer. It's definitely not a bad watch, not even close. The problem is that Casio just have so many iconic models at this point, there's a lot of competition within the brand, let alone outside of it. As ever, thank you for your time. If you've enjoyed what you've seen or found it informative, consider dropping the video a like and subscribing for more content like this.